This is CBC Here and Now.
Shredded tires. A company in CBS will turn the 500,000 tires that Newfoundland and Labrador produces annually into stuff like this to be used in the construction industry. Coming up on Here and Now.
The City of St. John's is looking for feedback on the next round of proposed shared use pathways in the city.
It helps us act on a number of the goals we have as a city, and it helps us create a city that's healthier to live in.
I'm Jeremy Eaton, and I'll tell you what they want to do and how you can have your say.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. The Innu inquiry looking into children in care says it will now take another year to complete its report. Originally, the report was scheduled to come out later this year. Now it's been pushed to October 2024. Today, the community hearings began in Sheshatshiu. It's a chance for people in the community to speak about their experiences in the child protection system. The hearings will last until everyone who wants to present has done so.
Whole communities can experience trauma, and there are very serious consequences to living in traumatic circumstances. And the longer you live in that kind of circumstances, the more serious the effects are. So our job is to certainly look at the effects, but more importantly, to look at the causes.
I know that this work is hard work, but it needs to be done. We need to give people the opportunity to be able to come and share their experiences where they've never had that kind of forum before. So I think it's really important to do that work.
Forest fires on Quebec's North Shore are impacting rail and road access to Western Labrador. Rio Tinto and IOC shut down operations in the region. That includes the mine, the concentrator, and the pellet plant in Labrador City. There are no plans to reopen before Friday. The fire has damaged a telecommunications tower and a fiber optic line, both belonging to Rio Tinto IOC. Route 389 is the only highway connecting Western Labrador to Fremont, Quebec. There's also a rail line through the region and up north to Shefferville. Well, no one was hurt as a result of an incident on the Hebron platform last month, but the offshore energy regulator says the incident could have been fatal. Workers were doing maintenance on a crane on the gravity-based structure when a device called a pin puller failed. A rod weighing nearly 7 kilograms flew through the air before hitting a handrail and dropping onto a walkway 20 meters below. The CNLOPB says ExxonMobil ceased work in the area and both are investigating. In other news, the head of St. John's Airport hopes a new direct flight from Montreal will help boost summer tourism. Starting later this month, Lynx Air will offer a direct flight from St. John's to Montreal with service to Calgary. That flight will be offered 3 times a week.
Well, Lynx has been operating at St. John's International for just over a year now, and the inaugural flight they had last year was proven to be quite successful, and that's to Toronto Pearson. And into some discussions with Lynx Air, we determined that there was enough of a market where a direct flight to Montreal with throughput onto Calgary would be ideal for this particular marketplace. So we were delighted that Lynx Air decided to join us in that regard, and that's what we're here today to celebrate. The demand for travel has returned in a very profound way, but we have a supply issue, which is kind of the reverse of what we had during the pandemic when all flights were ceasing. Now we have a situation where there is increased demand. We know that airlines are working very diligently to up their capacity to service markets like ours in St. John's and in the province, which are generally underserved.
Well, the new direct flight begins June 23rd and is expected to be offered until the early fall.
Well, speaking of flights, lots of flights being affected by this fog that we're seeing out there. And we're going to continue to see this fog stick around at least for the next couple of days. Certainly as we head into tomorrow, we're actually looking at some more rain moving in as well. But I mean, temperatures today were fairly chilly all along the northeast coast, 5 to 7 degrees. That's it. And then temperatures through central west coast a tad warmer than that as you get away from that onshore flow. But the hot spot was in Happy Valley Goose Bay today at 23 degrees. Cartwright not far behind at 22. But if you step outside right now, a much different story. Just to tell you what happens when those winds shift. So southwesterlies give you those 22-degree temperatures. You shift those winds to northerly and you drop down to the single digits, down to 6 degrees at the moment. Also a cold front moving through. That's what shifted your winds. Other than that, we've got some showers that are moving through across the island. That will continue and, like I said, get a little bit heavier as we head through tomorrow. But there's that fog that I was talking about. Lots of it. Current temperature sitting around 6 degrees. Winds generally light, but they are going to pick up for some of us as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. I'll break that down for you coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Hard to believe it's June in St. John's. Well, the province finally has a way to deal with all the scrap tires it produces every year. A new business in CBS will turn them into a product that helps the construction industry. Here now's Mark Quinn explains.
We throw out a lot of rubber tires in Newfoundland and Labrador, about 500,000 annually, close to one per person every year. We used to toss them in landfills, and then for many years we shipped them to Quebec, where they were burned as fuel at a cement plant. But now the province is going to try something different.
We're really excited about the coastal tire recycling facility that's been opened here in CBS. We're excited because it's a solution that we've been trying to find for tires in this province for quite a while.
In half a day, this facility can turn a massive pile like this at a rate of 700 tires per hour into chunks like this. It's called tire-derived aggregate, and it's been used in construction projects in other parts of Canada for many years.
Most of the projects that we do, it's used for lightweight fill, so it replaces rock in typical construction type jobs that may need a lightweight fill. Examples might be like over top of culverts, if you don't want too much weight on top of the culvert.
Coastal Tire Recycling is part of a larger group of Halifax-based companies. This province's Multi-Materials Stewardship Board will pay it about $3 million annually to get rid of these scrap tires. The board says that's about the same amount it collects annually from the fee consumers pay each time they buy a tire. This aggregate usually sells for about $5 to $7 per ton.
Currently, we're doing demonstration projects with it, so we aren't charging the contractors for using it until we get some projects established.
Coastal Tire Recycling expects to turn all of this province's used tires into about 5,000 tons of aggregate annually. Mark Quinn, CBC News, Conception Bay South.
Well, construction will start this summer on a path that will one day connect the town of Paradise all the way down to Kitty Vitty Village. And it's not just for those traveling on foot. The City of St. John's is part of the plan, but it's looking for some public feedback. Here now's Jeremy Eaton explains.
The goal is a broad network where people can move around by their own power, whether on a bike, in a wheelchair, or on foot.
At a technical briefing at City Hall, staff explained what it's proposing, connecting Airport Heights to the Paul Reynolds Community Centre, a new path along Columbus and Canada Drive to Bowring Park, and Portugal Cove Road to Logie Bay Road.
So people who roll, who bike, who walk. We have 10 kilometers of pathways that we're talking about here today. A set we're launching public engagement, and a set that we're giving an update on construction.
This year, pathway work will be done on Elizabeth Avenue, along the Kellysbrook Trail, and in and around Columbus and Canada Drive. According to city satisfaction surveys, many residents want to see a city that's more friendly for cyclists.
It helps us act on a number of the goals we have as a city, and it helps us create a city that's healthier to live in. People can move around by their own power. They don't have to be in a vehicle. If they can do that safely and conveniently.
In-person engagement sessions will be held later in June. People can also submit their thoughts online or take part in a virtual session.
All of the projects we're talking about here today are not riverside trails. We have made a commitment to have further conversation about whether the riverside trails become shared use pathways or if they remain as they are. but today's projects are separate from those.
So the proposal for the new shared use trails, which the city will engage the public about in the coming weeks, is just one step closer to the ultimate goal, which is starting on a trail here in Paradise and end up down here in Kitty Vitty. Froud says a lot of work has been done to make this dream a reality, but realistically, when it comes to cycling in the city of St. John's, there still is a long way to go.
We still have a long ways to go. So these projects will get us a good step forward, but there are a lot of pathways to build and a lot of progress that needs to be made to get us to where we need to be.
The tenders have yet to go out on the pathway projects this summer, but it should soon, and this portion of the project finished. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, a new tracking tool is helping research in Nunatsiavut take flight. The Nunatsiavut government and Birds Canada are installing 4 bird monitoring towers and is planning for more. Here Now's Heidi Adder reports.
In a place where beef and chicken are expensive in stores, heading out onto the land for ptarmigan and tur provides healthy replacements.
So we eat wild birds every day. So whether that's ptarmigan, partridge, or geese, or ducks, it's an extremely important part of people's diet. So it's really important for us to understand where our birds are coming from, the health of our birds.
But when birds are migrating through Labrador, they have a high chance of not making it to their destination. Migration is the shortest part of their year, but the most dangerous.
80% of mortalities occur during that time. So that's a 15 times more chance of dying during that time. But we don't really know where birds go, where they spend their time when they're migrating. So really, to be able to conserve birds effectively, we need to know where they're spending that time and where they move.
Now, the Nunatsiavut government and Birds Canada are installing monitoring towers to help. These towers use radio waves they send out within 20 kilometers. Those radio waves then pick up on tiny transmitters attached to different birds. One in Happy Valley Goose Bay is going up on the back of the Nunatsiavut government building.
This is really the first of the stations in the area. There's also a lot of interest in studying shorebird migration in this region because there's a shorebird migratory flyway through here.
As the climate changes, Nunatsiavut hopes it will give them a better understanding of this important food source. In the future, Michelle Saunders hopes to see towers in each of the North Coast communities. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
Well, do you have the guts to do it? This weekend, the local chapter of Crohn's and Colitis Canada held its annual fundraiser walk known as the Gutsy Walk. This is the 28th year for the walk, which brought out about 100 people to Mundy Pond in St. John's. The money raised helps with research into the condition that affects about 5,000 people in this province. There is no cure. The event was also a chance for people with the disease to get together and connect.
I was diagnosed with Crohn's when I was 18, so that's a long time ago now. But back then I didn't know anybody who had Crohn's or colitis. I felt lost, didn't know where to look. But now you hear of somebody newly diagnosed, they say, oh yeah, my friend has this, or my grandfather had that. So you're actually hearing people start to talk about it.
It was hard because I was constantly being ignored and people not really knowing what was wrong with me. I had symptoms ranging from joint inflammation to then all the abdominal issues that followed later, but I was severely sick and it was really hard to deal with, especially being a university student.
For the first time in the team's short history, the Newfoundland Rogues will host a playoff game at the Mary Brown Centre. The Rogues defeated the Georgia Soul over the weekend and advanced to the league's conference finals. Newfoundland will host the Albany Patroons on Friday night for the first game in a best-of-3 series before the teams move to Albany early next week.
The Coast Guard sent a large ship, a fast rescue vessel, and a chopper to rescue a British man who tried to cross the Atlantic. He didn't make it 5 miles. That story coming up.
Well, an area of low pressure just south of the Maritimes at the moment is going to bring lots of moisture as we head through the next couple of days. I'll break it all down for you coming up.
Chances are you heard about Andrew Bedwell. He's the British adventurer who was going to try to take basically a phone booth-sized sailing boat and try to make it across the Atlantic. It didn't work out. Have a look.
I don't know what to say to everyone who supported me, helped me. You've all been absolutely amazing, but big seas no more.
But exactly what went wrong with his attempt to cross the Atlantic, we're going to find that out now with the regional supervisor for the Coast Guard here, Mark Gould. Hi.
Good day, sir.
So take us right to the moment when this fellow got into trouble.
Well, we had been tracking him since the day before just because of the attempt that he was making and the risk associated with it. So we had a call from a support person on his team that he had been in trouble and taking on water about 5 miles east of St. John's.
So 5 miles east. Now his destination was the UK. He didn't make it that far.
No, he didn't, but truthfully his proximity to St. John's was a big factor in the positive result of the SAR case.
What do you mean about that? I saw a search and rescue.
Search and rescue, absolutely. The fact that we were able to get to him so quickly was a major factor. If something like this had happened 500 miles off, where we didn't have resources, it would have been likely a different story.
So can you give me a description of what the state of his vessel was in, what level of distress he was in?
Yeah, we had little information when we initially responded, but essentially we were told that he was taking on water, which is a very serious thing in the marine environment. So we tasked heavily. We tasked our Coast Guard cutter, Pennant Bay, out of St. John's, and a FRC from a large vessel here, the Gobet Hobson.
What's a FRC?
A fast rescue craft. It's a smaller boat designed for rescues out of the water. And we also tasked the helicopter because we really didn't know what we were dealing with other than that a man was in trouble and sinking.
So you sent a fairly significant vessel, a fast vessel, and a chopper?
Absolutely. When you don't have the answers to the questions about what exactly is happening, you need to be prepared for everything. And what we had, we figured that was the best approach.
Okay, so you get to him, he's taking on water, his phone booth, as I describe it, with a sail on it, is starting to take on water, sinking, I assume. What happened then?
Well, we were able to locate him with the help of his personal locator beacon, which he activated. And once we found him and the vessel was still afloat, we were able to rescue him. So he was taken on board the fast rescue craft, the smaller vessel, and his vessel was still afloat at the time, so we towed that one back to St. John's as well.
Okay, so the vessel actually made it back?
The vessel did make it back, yeah. We were able to rescue him and his vessel and get him back to port here in St. John's.
Okay, and what was his state? Was he hypothermic? Was he okay? What was he like?
He was okay. He was, relieved that we were there, but, we were able to get him back to shore safely, and that's kind of where our rescue and our response ended.
Now, I know, rescue is a life and death matter, but in this case you have someone who's voluntarily trying to do something a little out of the ordinary, to put it diplomatically. When Coast Guard professionals are sent on a rescue like this, you kind of shaking your head, or is it, we've got to do our job no matter who it is, even though this person has obviously put themselves in peril and they didn't need to?
It's business as usual. We don't really discriminate or get into why someone's in trouble. Our role is to rescue that person, so that's what we did. But it is important for anybody on the water, but especially adventurers who are taking additional risk, to make sure they consider those things and give due consideration to not just the risk they are taking, but the risk of the search and rescue responders and the other burdens that some of these responses can have.
So what kind of communication should an adventurer take into account before they do something like this?
It's important to have a sailing plan and some people be on shore to support you, but that's true for everybody on the water. And we promote that kind of messaging for everybody, to make sure you have a responsible person ashore that is tracking you, and that you have a way to communicate your distress, either by radio or by an emergency beacon of some sort.
I'm assuming he thanked you.
He did thank us, and I wish him the best. It was, his cause was honorable for sure.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Gould. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Some diplomatic responses from Coast Guard. Fortunately, no one was hurt in that incident, so that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the weather, my goodness, Ashley, everyone in our neck of the woods is talking about the weather. It feels like it's summer everywhere else but here.
You would be absolutely correct. Even in parts of the province, it's summer than right here in St. John's where we are. But yeah, let's just take a look at what's going on across, let's say, North America. Temperatures well into the 20s, very much feeling like summer, never mind spring. Temperature 30 degrees in Winnipeg, Toronto sitting at 24. You head further east, Montreal sitting at 22 degrees. And then we've got one lonely 7 degrees in St. John's today. But if I zoom in a little bit, there was a bit of heat out there, especially up across Labrador. 23 degrees in Happy Valley Goose Bay, just edging in there towards the coast. But those temperatures have dropped already today. 12, 13 degrees for parts of the west coast as well through central. About 15 degrees in Badger this afternoon. The reason for all that warmth is a big ridge in the jet stream. Then we've got that drop in the jet stream, and that allows some of that colder air to move in. And that's the case across northern portions of Labrador. And we've also got this low pressure system and a couple of cold fronts associated with it. That's where we're seeing that delineation between the cold and the warm air. And then our next weather maker is sitting south of Nova Scotia at the moment, bringing some much needed rain to those folks for sure as we head through the day today. And lots of moisture associated with it. You can see it kind of coming up there. And if I show you the moisture available in the atmosphere, you can see where all that moisture is coming from. So certainly lots available. And as we head through the next couple of days, that stream of moisture is going to head towards Newfoundland and Labrador. And we're going to see that through Tuesday. Eventually that hose, if we can call it a hose, will head towards the northern peninsula and southeastern Labrador. And it's actually going to stay in place as we head through into Thursday. So we are going to see quite a bit of rain with this one, especially in those areas. But the other thing is our visibility is going to be fairly low. Already seeing about 0.8 kilometers in St. John's as far as visibility is concerned. And this fog isn't going anywhere anytime soon, really. As we head through the night tonight, that fog will creep further inland through the overnight into tomorrow as well. We'll see some fog patches develop, well, I should say continue through the afternoon on Tuesday, even more so as we head into Wednesday. And eventually that will retreat back as we head into the afternoon hours, and then it will move right back in again as we head into the overnight into Thursday morning. So we've got lots of fog still on the horizon. As far as tonight's concerned, generally looking at that drizzle or showers for a good chunk of the island as we continue to see that onshore flow, maybe even see a few flurries for the northern portions of Labrador as our temperatures are going to be a tad cooler than that. But otherwise a fairly quiet night. Now the winds are going to turn to southeasterlies. So we are looking at some showers moving in along with some gusty winds, especially for the Rec House area, where you will see those southeasterlies gusting around 100 kilometers per hour through tonight and at least the first half of tomorrow. Temperatures tonight will stay fairly mild, 3 to 9 degrees. Labrador, similar temperatures, about 1 to 5, but again, that chance of flurries for northern portions of the Big Land. And then as the afternoon rolls through, that will change. The drizzle and showers will change to periods of rain. Start on the south coast and the eastern Avalon, and then eventually head further north towards the northern peninsula as we get into the overnight hours on Tuesday, and then even more so as we head into Wednesday morning and evening hours, I should say. As far as amounts go for rainfall, we're talking about 10 millimeters. That's a good bet. Northern Peninsula, though, by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, you're talking between 20 and 30 millimeters of rain. So as far as temperatures are concerned tomorrow, likely into the single digits again. Winds a bit brisk, especially for coastal areas along the west coast. You'll see 50 to 70 kilometer per hour winds, but overall gray skies, periods of rain, temperatures somewhere between 5 to as much as 13 as you head towards the west coast. And then for Labrador, single digits towards the coast, much cooler day in Happy Valley Goose Bay at 9, and Lab City will be hovering around 10 degrees. So now, speaking of precipitation, for a province that is so preoccupied with the weather, you might be surprised to hear that there's not a whole lot of data available when it comes to snow and rainfall amounts after the fact. But there is a program in place hoping to change that, but we'll be needing your help. Last week, I was at the CMOS conference and spoke to President Jim Abraham about how the public can play a part. So there's lots of kids downstairs. What is it that you want them to take away from this? What do you want them to do?
First of all, I'd like them to appreciate how important it is to get involved in science. And measuring rain and snow in your backyard is being part of the team. Hi, my name is Jim Abraham, and I'm the president of the Canadian Meteorological and Oceanographic Society. So this is the annual meeting of the Canadian Meteorological and Oceanographic Society, and today we're actually inviting schools from around the Avalon Peninsula to learn about the weather, the water, the oceans.
So what is this in your hand?
This is a CocoRAS rain gauge. Basically, it's a volunteer citizen science program to measure rain and snow.
So each of those little lines is a millimeter. Take a look and try it again.
Let's say about
Anyone else want to try?
25.
25?
Around there.
Okay.
This is a rain gauge, and basically there's a cylinder on the inside and a funnel on the outside, and the rain falls into the cylinder, into the funnel, and then you can very easily, whether you look through the outside funnel to determine how much rain has fallen, and you use a ruler, of course, to measure how much snow. And CocoRAS stands for community, collaborative, people working together and sharing the data, rain, hail, and snow. What average did you get measuring the
22 millimeters.
22? What about, have you done yours yet?
And so how many people do we have in Newfoundland and Labrador currently that are part of the CocoRAS?
I would say there's about 40, but we need a lot more because there's a lot of weather in Newfoundland and Labrador.
So if you're interested in being part of the CocoRAS family, how would you go about doing that?
So there's a website, there's videos on how to set it up, where to set it up in your backyard. You can compare your rainfall and snowfall with your neighbors or other towns and communities. You know, certainly it's important to meteorologists, but farmers, fishermen, snow clearing operators, water resource managers, hydroelectricity, flood forecasters. Everybody needs to know how much precipitation has fallen.
That's not just a fluctuation in the market, it's an absolute disaster for this province. So we need assistance.
Well, they didn't get the price they wanted from processors. Now they're looking for help from Ottawa. We'll speak with the head of the Fisheries Union about help for the crab fishery. Well, the crab fishery may be up and running again, but the fight for more compensation for harvesters and plant workers continues. The Fish, Food and Allied Workers Union says the 7,500 people in the province who rely on the crab industry should receive federal financial support, upwards of $15,000, to offset the losses from the drop in crab prices. Joining me now is FFAW President Greg Priddy. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for asking me.
Well, the low crab prices, that's an industry problem. So can you start by telling us why taxpayers should compensate people in the fishery?
We're in a very important position in this province, and that allows us to bring in money into this province, brand new money, $880 million last year. So we can't forgo that, and you can't forget about the people who work on the crab and harvest the crab. So it's a request that's been made before. There's a tradition of doing this. And we just got to make sure that during this crisis, our harvesting licenses don't fall into the hands of those people who would make away with us, those multinational companies that are in fact buying up licenses. So we have to be constructed properly to go into the future. So that's why I'm off to Ottawa on Wednesday, and I'm looking forward to some really good meetings on the future of this fishery, not only this year, but successive years in the future, ensuring that we maximize our returns from this crab industry.
In the news release, you mentioned that part of the justification for this is that the pandemic played a role in the sharp decline of prices this year, but harvesters also benefited during the pandemic. Prices were at their highest ever in 2021 and 2022. Many harvesters pulled in record profits and then also received EI in the off season. So shouldn't the profits made during the good years be able to help harvesters stay afloat during this bad year?
Luckily, there were no pandemic issues in the industry in 20 and 21. So the real impact on our crab industry and fishing industry in general is what happened in the United States over the last year. And that is when the American pandemic assistance money dried up, so did the appetite for crab. So we were about there's a 2-year lag period here, but in essence, we are suffering from the pandemic issues that have now hit this fishery. And if compensation was the order of the day in 2020 and 2021, then it's certainly the order of the day for 2023, when we're actually feeling the negative economic impact of the pandemic. So that's a part of the argument that we've built, and that's a part of the argument we'll be presenting to MPs and other officials in Ottawa this week.
Well, you know, we have heard other harvesters talk about how, you know, this industry is market driven, it fluctuates, you can never depend on what the price will be from year to year, and part of the ability to be successful in this industry is to plan for those bad years. So when you have, you know, years that are somewhat anomalies like 2021 and 2022 when the price was very high, and then you have another year where the price is very low, that you should be able to plan for those bad years. So what do you say about that?
Well, what you just said is an actual underestimate of the crisis. There's one thing to say, it's a commodity, fine. So there's good years and bad years, and we'll live with the good years and we live with the bad years. What we had here was a 71% reduction in the prices to harvesters and the province. As I said earlier, $880 million down to approximately $220 million, $240 million. That's a disaster. That's not just a fluctuation in the market. It's an absolute disaster for this province. So we need assistance on that to move forward.
The crab fishery in the Maritimes has been in full swing since the season opened, and those harvesters, they're also getting around $2.25 a pound, but they didn't tie up their boats and refuse to fish, and they're also not asking for compensation. So why should harvesters in this province get federal financial support?
Well, it's not apples and apples, quite frankly, Carolyn. I mean, There's a long history of co-ops in the Gulf, which sadly we don't have here, but it's something we can look at in the future for sure. It's harvester-owned plants in many cases. These people are fishing for $2.25. They don't pay. They have to pay their workers' comp from that money, I'm told. They also have to pay their EI rates from that money. So our system is a little different because we're unionized here. There's non-union for the most part over there. There may be associations, but the economics and how people are paid are quite different. So it's not really apples and apples.
Okay, Greg Pretty, we'll see what comes out of your trip to Ottawa. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Carol, and all the best.
Tomorrow on Here and Now, the Water Street Infrastructure Project. It's taken over a section of downtown every spring for the past 5 years, but in the big picture, the timeline is much longer.
When it was actually constructed versus when you start planning this, you know what I mean, you're into the 90s.
It's a story that stretches all the way back to the harbor bubble. Get the history and learn how our water works tomorrow on Here and Now.
Hi, it's Adam Walsh, host and producer of The Signal. We just wrapped a show that was in that spot behind me there, Crust. We went in, we talked about the operation, we met the folks involved. By the way, it's a Choices for Youth run social enterprise, and that was part of the conversation as well, what social enterprises are and who they help. Check it out.
So if you're going to go buy a piece of pizza and you buy a piece of pizza here, you're making a choice, right? So it's on us then to sort of educate you as to why you bought that piece of pizza beyond just wanting a piece of pizza. So it gives people, like maybe you're not going to go down to Choices for Youth Ducker Street office and write a huge check, but you can buy a piece of pizza. So there's helping folks understand the ways that they can commit, contribute, and learn about the work that we do besides being a huge donor or by being a part of some exclusive group or volunteering tons of time. There's lots of ways to not just participate but also to learn.
Well, I actually came from Ontario last August, and I came to start and build a whole new life for myself. And I was actually a regular shopper at the neighborhood. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. I loved the clothes that I got there, and I absolutely loved the blanket pricing. I got chatting with one of the employees there. His name is Alex. He gave me the social media. I DM'd and I got a response. I managed to get into the program. We did like a little 2-week training program, and then I actually got placed at the neighborhood. It was fabulous. We were learning basic skills of things that are appropriate in the workplace, things that have to be done, like very, very simple things. How to do a handshake, how to do a good handshake, how to write up a resume, even the smaller things of learning how to sweep before you mop, all that kind of stuff. Just really good things to get yourself prepared to deal with customers actually at the workplace.
Come in here, you'll see our stories written on the wall. It's highlighted.
Tell me that, just because I was looking at it earlier. Just read it out for me, will you?
So it says, our story. At Crust, we believe that starting from scratch is a good thing and that all good things take time. That's why all our products are handmade with carefully sourced ingredients right here daily. Getting the feeling that we do things a bit differently? Well, we're a social enterprise that's mentoring the next generation of bakers, chefs, and leaders. Every order helps us provide more opportunities for local youth. Thank you for being a part of our story. Hashtag In Crust We Trust.
Hashtag In Crust We Trust. So what happens if Crust isn't here, if Neighborhood isn't here, if these other social enterprises aren't here? Like what happens to the folks who would have been involved?
Well, I can tell you that in the last quarter alone, that is tens of thousands of unemployment hours or system use. I can tell you that is 60 to 70 young people still at home, wherever home may be. I can tell you that is in excess of 13,000 pounds of clothes going God knows where. I can tell you that is a team of 30 plus skilled people that don't have jobs. So the effect and the impact that we have environmentally, socially, economically is massive. And it's so much more than a piece of pizza or a secondhand dress.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today said this is going to be a particularly bad fire season for Canada, but he promised to help communities and people in need.
With the given projections, it is expected that we have enough resources to cover the summer. If things get worse, we are developing contingency plans, and we will, of course, make sure that we are there, whether it's leaning more on international supports, whether it's standing up other resources. We will be there to ensure that all Canadians are protected right through this summer.
Almost 1,000 people from other countries are helping to fight the fires here. This group arrived in Alberta from South Africa. The Canadian military is providing assistance in Quebec. The battle is also raging in Ontario. This is a fire in the Ottawa area. And the largest fire in Nova Scotia's history continues to burn, though the rain is helping out. Natural Resources Canada says there are 413 active fires burning across the country. 49 are out of control. Correctional Services Canada says it's reviewing its recent decision to move Paul Bernardo to a medium security prison. Before that, Bernardo had been serving a life sentence at a maximum security facility. He was found guilty of kidnapping, torturing, and murdering 15-year-old Kristen French and 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey in the early 1990s. The lawyer of the victims' families say they were given no warning or explanations for the transfer. The CBC's Catherine Cullen reports.
I was profoundly concerned and again shocked by this decision.
The public safety minister condemns the decision to move Paul Bernardo, but he can't change it.
It is important to underline that under the law, this is an independent decision.
On Friday, news broke that the notorious serial rapist and killer had already been transferred from this Ontario maximum security prison to a medium security one in Quebec, prompting outrage.
I fully and totally understand how shocked and appalled so many Canadians are.
Mr. Bernardo is a monster and he belongs in maximum security.
And from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Paul Bernardo should rot in a maximum security prison for the rest of his miserable existence, full stop. The Correctional Service of Canada said in a statement the decision will now be reviewed to ensure it was appropriate, evidence-based, and more importantly, adequately considered victims.
It just brings sadness and despair and disbelief to them.
The lawyer for the families of victims Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French say the Correctional Service won't even explain why Bernardo was moved or whether he's now in the general prison population instead of solitary confinement.
They should not be hiding behind the privacy rights of the offender, of this particular kind of offender, the worst of the worst, the most evil of evil.
I think going forward, it will be up to the Correctional Services of Canada to explain to Canadians exactly how these decisions are taken.
Mendocino says years ago Canadians were assured Bernardo would live out his days in a maximum security prison. It's not clear whether this review will send him back to one. The minister says he expects an update soon. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, an Australian woman who was once considered the country's worst female serial killer has been released from jail. New evidence indicates she was wrongly convicted. The 55-year-old was freed today after spending 20 years in prison. In 2003, she was convicted in the deaths of her 4 children. Kathleen Folbig has always insisted they died of natural causes, and new scientific evidence indicates she was telling the truth. It turns out that all of her children had genetic mutations that led to their deaths. The case is considered by some to be Australia's greatest miscarriage of justice. And Prince Harry skipped a court appearance in a phone hacking lawsuit today, and his absence did not sit well with the judge in London. His lawyers said he stayed in California to celebrate his daughter's birthday. The judge was, quote, a little surprised by the prince's absence after asking Harry to be ready to testify today in case lawyers finish their opening arguments earlier than expected. Now, the prince is expected to take the stand tomorrow in his case against Mirror Group newspapers. This case is the first of his 5 pending legal cases, largely centered around battles with British tabloids. Prince Harry accused them of phone hacking and other invasions of privacy dating back decades. Sorry, just chatting about the weather over the break. I went out to one of the garden centers on the weekend, and boy, it is just not very inspiring right now to get the garden going.
No.
All the gray rain, the gray weather with the rain, and just give us some double digits.
I know it's
not asking for much.
No, and even if it's 10 or 12 degrees and it was raining like that, it wouldn't feel so bad. But yeah, the single digits don't feel too great. The good news is, as we head into the beginning of next week, I do see a little bit of change in the pattern. So hopefully more spring-like weather on the way. Let's take a look at what's going to happen in the meantime. We do have some moisture moving in as we head through to Tuesday night, well, I should say Tuesday and into Tuesday night and Wednesday. That stream of moisture actually going to head towards the northern peninsula, where you will see most of it through the afternoon and evening hours on Wednesday. However, it does look like anywhere along the northeast coast we'll still see those showers or periods of rain into the evening hours. Now, temperatures will get a bit warmer, especially through central and the west coast, between 17 and 18 degrees. Still saying between 11 and 13 for most of eastern Newfoundland. Northern peninsula, you'll stay a tad cooler than that, between 6 and 8 degrees. And then those will be the temperatures up across Labrador as well, between 4 and 8. But there is, yes, warm up coming over the next couple of days. So into Wednesday evening and through to Thursday morning, we're still going to see that stream of moisture. Could pick up another 20 to 30 millimeters of rain with that, and pretty much continues into the evening hours. Now, northern portions of Labrador, you will clear out. At least through the afternoon hours, you should see some sunshine. However, your temperatures will stay a tad cooler. Now, warming a bit for Lab City, back into the double digits just barely. And then we're talking about the potential for 20 degrees through parts of central as we get into Thursday, and warming up as well for St. John. So nearly double what we are seeing now. So about 16 degrees through the afternoon on Thursday. Same thing as you head towards the west coast, and temperatures between 10 and 13 along the south coast of the island. So the long range forecast does look not too bad as far as temperatures are concerned. We will see those double digits. It does look a bit rainy though. By Saturday, maybe a few showers, but overall the sun should peak out. So that 15 degrees certainly going to feel lovely. And as we head towards central Newfoundland, we're looking at that 20 degree mark by Thursday. And then Friday and Saturday dipping a little bit, but still staying into the double digits. Again, unsettled through the afternoon, as you see, with some showers certainly by Saturday. And then for western Newfoundland, similar forecast. A few peaks of sun certainly possible Wednesday, Thursday, but then overall gray by the time we get into the weekend, 12, 13 degrees. Eastern Labrador, after the single digits, that 20 degrees on Saturday is certainly going to feel nice. We will see some sunshine as we head into the afternoon hours, but western Labrador, you'll see that similar warm-up. Looks a bit more dry for you as you see your temperature around 20 degrees for Saturday. Now this shot, beautiful, dramatic sunset. This was in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Monique shared this shot with us, and if you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, this, if you see the sun and some sunsets over the next couple of days, you can share them with us. Facebook, Twitter, but the best place is to email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, that's beautiful. Bit of a cool down in that part of Labrador as well. It's been so nice.
It's been beautiful. Temperatures, into the 20s and 30s. Obviously, forest fire risk higher, so this rain will help with that, which is nice. But then temperatures returning as we head through the end of the week.
Okay, well, that's it for us on this Monday evening. As we leave you tonight, we're going to give you a little live look at the rooms, or not the rooms, from the rooms camera of St. John's Harbour right now. It's a bit of a gray evening out there.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah, can't see a whole